Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, 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 everybody, to the live taping of Podcast Pontifications. I'm not so sure that my volume is loud enough. It is not. It is not loud enough. Let's do some adjusting of that so we can get that a little bit louder so that the systems all like it. Okay, that's looking good. Let's look over here. File. New audio recording. Okay, that's looking better, but it's still not perfect. Okay, I need to adjust this back down. Push this button and lift it up. Okay, now we're cooking with gas so I can say hi. Welcome, everyone, to the live taping of Podcast Pontifications. My name is Evo Terra. Thanks for joining me on a lovely Wednesday. It's rainy and cool here at my house in Phoenix, Arizona, so I'm excited. Yay! Can you tell? I just got excitement all around. We love it when it's not crazy hot outside. and right now it's not crazy hot outside, so that's a good thing. Hey, today the topic of conversation, we're continuing the thread set up on Monday, which is all about why has your show plateaued. And today we're talking about getting people to recommend your podcast, which is the whole reason why it's not growing. And I'm still peaking over there. It's the whole reason. I'm still peaking. Let's try that again. Yeah. The reason your show stops growing is because people stop recommending it. There's no secret. That's reality. So we're going to talk today. I'm going to share with you what I'm calling the very clickbaity headline of the easy way to get people to recommend your podcast. It's all about making it easier to recommend your podcast. But, title's going to do what title's going to do. Let's check in with the chat room. I see Arlen there. I see Kevin there. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me. If you're watching or whatever you're watching on, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or LinkedIn, you can drop a comment in this live feed at the bottom. I'll see it, and I will say hello, at least for the next couple of minutes, because this is just warm-up time for me, and in about 2 minutes, the actual real-life program will start. And then I won't be watching the chat window until I come back afterwards because, I've got something to say. Actually, on this topic that we're going to talk about today, I didn't sleep very well last night because it kept rolling through my head. How do I want to approach this? Sometimes that happens with me. Sometimes it's an easy thing. I get up and I nail it. I know what I'm going to talk about. But I just was second-guessing myself last night on how I want to do things. So I woke up at around 5 and wrote a whole bunch of stuff. Then I went and took a shower and I realized, you know what? No, I want to go this direction. So I've taken it another turn because there's so much you can talk about. There's so much I can talk about with this. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about what works and recommendations. And then there's the fact that podcasting is different. So anyhow, it's going to be one of those days for me. I'm a little punchy already as it is. Hey, if you are brand new and you're still watching, wondering, is this really a podcast? No, this is the live recording of a podcast. As I mentioned, the actual real live content will begin in a couple more minutes. You can skip all of this if you wish and just go to podcastpontifications.com. That's where you can get the finalized audio, which will be available at 10 o'clock in the morning Phoenix time. That's just over 3 hours from now. I'm also going to write an article. I'm going to take every word I'm about to say. I have a series of notes. I'm going to read those notes as I talk, but I will take every word that comes out of my mouth and I will reorganize those words with my magic fingers to make a wonderful article, which you can read. All that's also at podcastpontifications.com. And if you have added your email address to podcastpontifications.com, you will get Podcast Pontifications in your inbox, which will, through the magic of the internet, send down that audio file, a link to it at least, and the complete article, like right there in your email client. So if you're the kind of person who wants to read 1,000 or so words in your email client, this is the trick for you. All right, I think I have all of my housekeeping stuff. I think the voice is warm, so let's switch to all of this stuff here. By the way, is this thing working properly? Never know. Sometimes things go kind of wonky. It looks like that's a little frozen, so I'm gonna refresh Restream here. Make sure it's still all going right, because it didn't look like it cleared the cache. Frozen. So it's fine now. All right, we're all good to go. We are solid as a rock. All right. So let me read the preamble. And by preamble, of course, what I mean is cold open. This is not the Constitution. This is a podcast, Sir Wendy's. All right, topic is the easy way to get people to recommend your podcast, and I'm going to start by saying, in reality, it's hard for podcast listeners to recommend podcasts. If your show's growth, show apostrophe S, if your show's growth has stalled, there are some steps you can take to make it easier for your most loyal fans to recommend your show. Yes, that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it right about now. Check the chat window once again. Hi, Stephanie. All right, here we go, guys. Let's get the recording done. Oh, I need to move that. You know, I work on one. I'm thinking about making the jump and buying a second monitor. I know. Then I can have all my controls on one spot and others here. People wonder how I do it. And with one screen, and my answer is not very efficiently. Anyhow, all right, let's do this. I'm going to start the audio recording and the video. In reality, it's hard for podcast listeners to recommend podcasts. If your show's growth has stalled, there are some steps you can take. Jeez, steps you can stake? My goodness. Try that again. In reality, it's hard for podcast listeners to recommend podcasts. If your show's growth has stalled, there are some steps you can take to make it easier for your most loyal fans to recommend your show. Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. Why is my show not growing? Has been the topic we're dealing with all week here on Podcast Pontification. Why have I reached that plateau? Well, as we've said, it's because people aren't recommending your show any longer. And that's because, or it might be at least partially because, it's not all that easy to recommend your podcast. But before you start Googling, how do I make it easy to recommend my podcast? Look, let's first talk about who it is we're talking about. Because the people you want to recommend your show, or the people you rely on to recommend your show, are the hardcore, retained audience that come back and keep downloading and listening to your episodes week after month after day, whatever. Those people are the evangelists. It makes much more sense that they're the ones more likely to recommend your podcast than someone who just found your show via a Google search or has listened a single time, or maybe they didn't listen at all. So you can automatically, by making that bifurcation of who we want to make the recommendations, we can start discounting, if not outright discarding, any tips and tricks that don't speak to the behavior of the loyal listening audience. So yes, that does mean, in fact, you have my permission to uninstall that social share icon pack from your website that's cluttering things up. All right, let's get back to making it easy for your core listening audience to recommend your show. Now, it makes sense that when someone is listening to you, when they're having that aha moment, when they are getting the value from your program, it makes sense that right there is a great time for someone to make a recommendation. But you know it's not, right? For a couple of reasons. One, podcast listening apps themselves are not great at sharing content. They don't make it easy to share or recommend content. And while, yes, they all have a share functionality while you're listening, they're all in there. Some even make it very easy for you to take a clip, for your listener to take a clip of your show and share that and recommend it to other people. But as I mentioned, there are two problems with sharing via apps. First, apps aren't universal. And so a link from Apple Podcasts or Overcast or even Podverse is a link to the episode or the show in that app and that app only. And that's a problem the industry is working to solve. So that's not all that helpful. That's a smart growth tactic if you are that app, less so for your podcast. The second part of that is most people, when they are listening to your show, are listening with the show, their phone in their back pocket, in their cup holder of their car, on the counter or they got sudsy hands. It's just not the right time to get someone to make a recommendation when they're listening. As cool as that would be, as much sense as it makes, probably not. Social apps, however, are a totally different story. You see, the entire thing about social media is it is built for sharing. You know this. And while we all know that social websites, Twitter, Facebook, name any of them, they all hate audio-only content, we have to remember that a lot of people do share audio content on social. All sorts of content. They retweet, they share, they comment, they pass along information to other people all the time. Now, some podcast brands have really become part of the social fabric and are engaging with the overall social platform, all the people there in lots of ways so that they can get shared. I'm thinking of Podchaser and Buzzsprout. Just check out their Twitter feeds. See how much they are involved with the overall community of podcasting on those platforms. They're heavily engaged. Their content gets great engagement, and therefore it gets lots of shares. Now, a lot of smart and socially savvy podcasters play that similar game. They don't turn to social media just to pimp their latest episode. They instead engage with their listeners in detailed conversation. That keeps them top of mind, which keeps them in the consideration the next time someone says recommendations on podcast in that social platform. Do you know where your loyal listeners are on social? What platforms they're using? Yesterday, I talked about a survey, and I've implemented that survey. I'll talk about it in just a moment. You can find out where your loyal people are interacting, and then that means you should be there too. Follow your most loyal listeners. Engage with your most loyal listeners on their social platform of choice. Because if your social media presence gives your listeners, your loyal listeners, value, they're very likely to return that value by recommending your show more. Now, finally, I'm going to turn to the killer app, email. Yes, again, email. Evo is going to talk about email. But hold on. How many times do you or have you forwarded an email? How many times have you received a forwarded email? It's a lot, right? Now, lots of podcasters, some of which are my clients, unfortunately, eschew the idea of doing more with email because they want people to listen to their show, not read it. And I get it. So I'm here to say, you don't have to give away the episode in text form like I do, although I do highly recommend that move. It works really well. But you should, however, do more with email than just send out a notification of a new episode. So if you do that, like think infographics or key quotes, maybe even emailing a link to the resources that were mentioned in your most recent article. If you can make the email you send valuable more than just a notification, that not only helps your most loyal listeners remember you all the time, but they're also more likely to recommend and pass that great information you're giving to other people because it's email. But there has to be value in the email before they forward it. So when you write an email, think, is this something that someone should forward? You don't have to write the full article like I do, but you certainly do have to create something of value so that someone says, yes, I would, in fact, like to send this off to a friend. And recommending that value through email is super easy if you put value in to begin. Now, there's a lot more we could cover on this topic, like, custom domains, making sure that your content looks great when it's shared, rewarding loyalty, but all of that are topics for another day. For now, as mentioned, I do have the survey in place, the listener survey. Hooray! A few of the people in the advancing podcasting community have already given it a test run, so it's ready for you. You can do the same thing. There will be a link in the episode details. I'm trying to get a forward set up, but I hadn't get it done by the time I was recording. So anyhow, check the episode details and you'll find a link, or check the email, because I'm going to email you a link to that survey as well. If you're a loyal listener of podcast pontifications, I appreciate you. You can return some of the value that you get from me every single day by visiting buymeacoffee.com/evoterra and signing up for a recurring monthly virtual coffee donation membership. I would appreciate that. Now, On Thursday's episode, we'll talk about how mastering your craft can ensure your loyal fans keep on recommending your show. With that, I shall be back tomorrow with yet another podcast Pontifications. Cheers! Video recording has stopped. Audio recording has stopped. Streaming continues. Checking over here. So, there we go, guys. Some ideas on making it easier for your loyal fans to recommend your podcast. And man, that was a lot of content I shoved down there. It's a good thing I put up that newsletter, isn't it? So you can redigest and see a retumbled write-up. So you can let it sit in your brain better. Podcast Pontifications in your inbox. If you're not subscribed to it, subscribe for it only for this reason here. And if you are just now tuning into the live feed, well, you could back up 15 minutes and 52 seconds if you wanted to, or you could just go to Podcast Pontifications, because in 2 hours and 45 minutes, I will have the episode finished, published. I'll hit push at the Captivate, the hosting company. I will also have that article up at Podcast Pontifications. And again, if you're on the email list, if you've signed up for Podcast Pontifications in your inbox, which is free, you'll get that notification. Not just a notification. You will get the link to the MP3 file. You will get the complete article all in your inbox so you can consume it up at your heart's desire. Right. Okay. Well, that was a lot of information. Thank you very much for your attention and hanging out with me as I shared it with you today. I do appreciate it. I'm going to make a little note of the thanks to Arlen, Kevin and Steph for watching and saying hi this morning. Got it. Okay, boom. Right, so the full episode will be available, like I said, in 2 hours and 45 minutes. Again, thanks for your attention. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about mastering the craft with the express purpose of getting people to recommend your show to others. We got to keep on keeping on. Right? Right. Beautiful. Have a great day. See ya tomorrow. Bye.